Hello, ladies. Thank you for letting me break into your day today. I'm really excited to bring you today's Smart Women interview with designers Hillary Wambolt and Brandy Van Gessel of Awaekn Creative. They are designers who have brought some serious innovation and design talent to our beautiful WEiC branding. I am so excited to talk with these ladies today. Their focus is bringing educational design that breaks stigmas in the cannabis industry. And I think that they are doing a phenomenal job and will definitely go down in history in our industry as being part of really innovating really cool brands, bringing high style and design to this industry that is sorely, sorely lacking it. These ladies are the talent, as I said, behind our gorgeous new look, and they have agreed to sit down with us today and actually go over how they built our beautiful new logos, color palette, brand book. We're going to talk about all of that. And then they're going to walk us through some of their other clients so we can see what their process is in an effort to actually educate you when you sit down to do your branding, what you need to think through and how you need to talk with your designers to really get what it is that you want in the end, allowing them to bring their talent and expertise to helping you define your brand identity. So ladies, if you have questions, if you are working on your branding right now, please put them in the comments. We will get to them at some point in the broadcast. They are here to answer those questions for you today. So ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me. I am really looking forward to digging in to really understanding more about how you developed our gorgeous logos.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having us. It was an awesome process to be a part of. So we're really excited to talk about it and kind of shed some light. Yeah, I'm Hillary.
Sorry, Brandy and Hillary, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, just in case we're going back and forth, so you know who's who. But
So ladies, why don't we just start by digging into the new Caden Enterprises and WEiC branding, and we can walk through what the process was. Now, there's something that I have been struggling with since I started working in the social media world about 10 years ago. And that is that with the digital tools that we now have, we're able to build a lot of different projects, but we want them under a single banner. So I have been working with, life coaches and product businesses who have multiple things that they want to do. And it's really challenging to bring it all under one brand and give multiple products or projects a singular identity and yet giving them their own identity. So that was really the challenge that I laid down for the two of you with Caden Enterprises, because we have an education platform at Caden Academy. We have the new directory that we're launching for Caden's List, and we have WEiC and all of the things we're doing under that, as well as our event series, Cannabis, Women Empowered in Cannabis. So we are really, Cannabis Women Empowerment Summit.
Yeah.
We have so many different titles here. I'm having a hard time keeping track. So your challenge really was to be able to give them each a distinguishable enough look that we could tell them as separate entities, but something that tied them all together. So how did you go about doing that?
I think it really came down to color and shape, and then kind of identifying through color, you find tone, which sets overall mood and theme. And then shape we utilize it for organization.
Well,
so let's open.
Well, and so we'll share, this is the Caden brand book. So this, your brand book is kind of your main document that you have in your business that tells you how everything should look and feel. So this is going to be where your color palettes are, where your official logos are, different combinations of those, basically anywhere you're using it. So before we kind of split this off into separate identities, we really wanted to come up with one thing that we could use throughout. And so that's kind of where this central, it's a star and a cannabis leaf kind of conjoined into one. And we kind of jumped off at this from the academic standpoint. So we wanted something that felt very you know, like a club, like something you could belong to, and that again could be used in these multiple different settings for different applications. So I'd say the start of this was really developing that central shape that you see, which is kind of the star for like the inspiration, the knowledge, that spark that gets you going, and then overlaid with our super familiar cannabis leaf shape that we all know and love. And then making it also something that feels like fun and fresh. And I think that's where the colors came into play for sure.
Yeah. And so from that seal, I mean, colors.
Can we go back before, because there's something that I want to bring up. So the challenge for you two, because we work on other projects together as well.
Yeah.
And the cannabis leaf is obviously the most recognizable symbol in our industry, but it's sorely overused.
Yes.
And it's very hard to get something unique looking that isn't blatant and in your face that you've seen before that looks like it's being ripped off from someone else.
Right.
So with the number of clients in the industry that you deal with, how do you approach that? Because it's this one symbol that you can't really vary too much, but you've managed to make it look really unique here.
Well, and I think and Kira, it also helps with really knowing your brand strategy and knowing who you are and who your demographic is. I mean, you knew off the bat with Caden Enterprises that you had a more female audience. So Brandy and I really, and again, knowing who you are and who you want to emulate really helps that, because we knew that we could take this cannabis leaf and involve softer curves,
a little bit more floral. Our colors could lean a little bit more feminine, but still professional. And truly, that's where you push those shapes. I mean, take the cannabis leaf. I mean, it's a gorgeous flower, and we're able to emulate it in so many different ways. But it's really comes down to knowing, using the right line weight, using the right curves. Well, and I think too, not being too literal. So like in this case, if you were to break this down and actually pull out the leaf shape, it's not like anatomically correct to a real cannabis leaf. So you have to be willing, I would say, to push and pull it a little bit, because
really play.
A lot of times, the first thing you look at, it's that leaf everyone's seen with the 7 points. But working with the proportions in that also is a huge part of that unique factor. So for us with this one too, the fact that we're using it inside another shape and it's offset, that gives another kind of point of difference. We're also cutting off the edges. Just finding a way, I guess, to bring in additional shapes and to play with the shapes and proportion. Don't feel like you need to, just because you're starting with that as an inspiration, don't be afraid to really push it and see where it goes. Because a lot of times you'll find the more subtle and well-designed a logo is, it's just because they've taken something that was maybe their first obvious thought and then really pushed it out until it becomes its own identity.
And again, being anatomically correct is not, again, what Brandy said. Sometimes good design is subtraction. It's not addition. It's sometimes really simplifying it and really drawing those details back a little bit, which often helps. So
you mentioned curvature and weight of the lines, kind of outlining it. And now that you say that, I can see there is some soft curvature in the leaf, and the weight that you have put on the outside. It's like, how big is that border, right? Is that what you mean by weight? How big is that border on the inside and the outside?
Yeah, let's go to this, because this is a better breakdown of like that main seal, that main logo.
When like looking at this, we want to make sure over on the far right that you're able to, that it works in a single color. So I guess if we're backing way up to like, what are your basics you need for a logo? Something you always want to think about is using it in a single color, because you're always going to have you're going to need to print it really tiny somewhere, or you're going to need to put it on a, black shirt or something like that. So you want to make sure it works in a single color, as well as any of your brand colors you use. And of course, in this case, like, we love the colors. We need to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So that too is something that gets really important when you're talking about line weight. And I'll go through we can maybe look at WEiC, since I think that's the one people have seen the most of so far.
Yeah.
So, you know, in this case, we're keeping the line weight consistent throughout all the different versions. And then by doing that, you can see in the single color version and also in the reverse, you preserve all those shapes and it stays really visually consistent throughout.
Right. And that weight is so important. That's brand recognition. You know, if you see your logo in a lightweight and then a heavier weight, they often look so different. So that's something to be aware of. Those small details can make all the difference.
Well, that really is the difference. One of the subtle differences between a brand and a logo.
Yeah, consistency. Yeah, absolutely.
And all the different, so as we're kind of leafing through this too, so this is typically what we'd include in a brand book. It can grow from here, but really what you want to see is like your main primary logo that you're going to use. That's your full color version. Just rule of thumb, you want to stick to maybe 2 colors in a logo. So in this case, we've got 2 colors plus our neutral. And then we also have our single color versions, but you generally want to reduce it down as much as you can, just for clarity. In the new age of kind of web brands and digital, we're starting to see some more gradients and things like that. But rule of thumb, stick to some single flat colors, make it work. If it works in the flat colors, you can always experiment later. So in this case, we have this central color palette, which are all these colors you see here, but we're only using certain ones for certain sub brands. So that's another kind of part of that brand implementation. So even though the Caden umbrella includes all 6 of these colors, as we go through, you can see that like Caden's list is really heavily pulling on the pale pink and that lighter green. Caden Academy is using a more monochromatic color scheme. So that's the more reds and the pinks. But when you put them all together, they're still using some of the same consistent colors. And that really helps it feel like it all belongs together. And this is a great way to do different product lines. So if you set up your main brand.
I was going to say, in relation to the cannabis industry, say you're a grower or you're full vertical, right? And you have all these sub brands that you're not only selling in your own storefront, but multiple storefronts. Sub brands, again, organization can also come down to color and shape, which I think we did well in emulating, from, your WEiC is square, Caden Academy keeps a circle, and Caden's list is taking on a triangular presence. And in the seal, you can see those same shapes being emulated. And then I guess we'll hit on shape again. In the summit, we simplify these so that, you're recognizing them as separate entities, but you're also seeing them being used together in multiple places. And that's really how you create that kind of customer loyalty, is when you are emulating this multiple times, but in a very organized way.
Repeating elements. Yeah.
Yes,
so
repeating
color,
elements.
Shapes, weight. So we were talking about weight again. You can kind of see, even though the Cannabis Women Empowerment Summit, that's a mouthful, even though that logo, it feels very different. We're not using any of the shapes, the line art that we're using from the other ones. We're still using the same weight for that triangle to kind of bring them together. Same weight, same colors. So when you see them all together, it feels like very natural and feels like it makes sense.
I love it. I was nervous about what I was going to get back from you about how you were going to deal with this, but you've done such a phenomenal job. And what I really love about the CWest logo here that we're looking at right now is that it has the feel, once you know the WEiC logo and the Cadence logos, you look at this and it just speaks to the fact that this is everything together. And we don't actually have to say it. The logo itself says, this is where all of those things that you experience through our brands comes together offline.
And I think strategy, let's not forget, Kira, your strategy, a part of a brand and its collectiveness is because of that original brainstorming and that strategy and that direction. And since you knew that you were going to have an event an event series that took all of these brands and put them together. Brandy and I were able to create, you know, this logo that really does tie it all in. I think the seal and the CWES logo really tie in, you know, those entities together in the sub brand. So, you know, we recommend, you know, that's where you can be playful. Say you do have sub brands, but you don't really see them working together. Create that opportunity, you know, create an opportunity where they're all kind of seen together, whether it's in a seal. And that's why brands are constantly evolving. You know, I think oftentimes clients come to us and say, well, we need a logo or we need this. And it's really an evolution all the time. If you're open, you're constantly evolving your brand. It should be changing. It should be continuing that brand voice through products, event flyers. So it's fun. It's a time to be playful once you have that first strategy established.
So speaking of playful, can we go back to color? Because
I want to talk about the color a little bit.
So my first basic question, if I am someone new to branding, I think, okay, well, I just need the color that you're going to put in my logo. But you bring back to me 7, 8 colors. So I'd like to dig into how many colors go in a color palette. How do you decide which colors go together? And how do you decide which colors are right for the brand?
First off, I think Brandy and I establish your white and your black, or your dark tone and your light tone. Blacks can be intense on the eye. I mean, they're in certain cases, you know, full 100% black is necessary, and your whites are necessary, especially if you're going more towards a simplified brand. But we like to establish a dark tone and a light tone to really set our reverse and our contrast. And that's typically what we work in when we're starting building anyways. So I think we establish our light and our dark tones first, and then we develop our asset colors from there.
And in this case, so Kira had started us off with this, another part of the process that we haven't really put, you know, you're not really seeing necessarily here, but we've got a branding survey that we'll send out that just kind of asks what your goals and point of view is. And then also, you know, is there anything you already had in mind? So like in Kira's case, she already had a few colors that she was kind of leaning towards and drawn to. So yeah, we will oftentimes take, you know, your general color direction, and then it's really nailing down a dark and a light. So in this case, it's that like charcoaly tone with the pale pink. And then we knew that we were going to do something with pink and teal for this case, and like a burgundy. So that was kind of already known. And I think for this one, once we had the charcoal and the pale pink, and also something to know is we went through several rounds of color on this. So it's not something that you're necessarily going to like nail right away.
And
don't be afraid.
We never nail it the first time.
Don't be afraid to play with it, sit with it overnight, you know, feel it in your soul. That's okay.
Feel it in your soul. Yeah, truly.
But you know, so something to mention about Kira's color palette. This is what you'd call a complementary color palette. So red and green are opposite from each other on the color wheel. And because of that, you have to be really careful about how you combine them. Everyone knows red and green is Christmas, or something I always think about with red and green is like that Raphael the Ninja Turtle. So you don't want to be, you don't necessarily, you know,
you're a baby of the 90s, aren't you?
Yeah. unless that's what you're going for. But so in this case, we chose this really rich burgundy that feels really nice with the pale pink.
And it's still in the red family. So, you know, use those contrasts as rule of thumb, and make sure you're still playing within your, you know, your warms or your cools.
Right. Well, and the reason they're not so jarring is because the tones we've chosen, the darker tones are a little bit darker. They're a little bit less saturated. So saturation is kind of like how intense the color is. So we've picked the burgundy and then the green. They kind of sit on the same wavelength as far as how dark and how bright they are,
but still complementing each other.
And then we pulled out a mid-tone from each of those. And that's the thing to mention too, is that used to be, you know, you really only needed 1 or 2 brand colors. And in this day and age, well, one, we've got multiple brands that we're working with under an umbrella, but also with web. With anything that you're going to have on your website that you're also carrying over into, you know, packaging or things in the real world, you just kind of need some extra things to play with. So it's always a good idea even if you're only using 2 colors in your main logo, pick some of those accent colors because you're going to need them for your brochures, your collateral, your packaging, all that type of thing.
Sometimes, especially with printing or application, Brandy and I sometimes approach color with process too. So say we're approaching a brand, or I guess Kira, in your case, we're looking at t-shirts and some merchandise, and Brandy and I sometimes we added a metallic in just for, hey, when we go to print, we know that a metallic, we can use it, we can print a metallic. So also think about spot gloss or maybe matte textures.
Yeah.
Textures can also kind of work in, and establishing those early on and making sure that they go with your existing color palette makes your job easier when you're ready to play further down the line. You can say, oh, well, we already knew that we could work with a spot gloss or a metallic, and we're excited about printing that on our business cards. Or those small details can really help dial up your brand. But establishing them early on, you just know that it's gonna, fit seamlessly.
Something else you should mention on color is the color green, because everyone, it's a common color, and we're not saying there are no rules. There's no hard and fast rule that says you can't use green, but I would highly suggest opening up a paint website and just going through a bunch of different shades and trying to pick one that you haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be done. Again, it's about implementation, but just try and pull something that feels a little bit different if you want to stand out.
Yeah.
So when we started this process, I laid down kind of the direction of the colors I was feeling now. But how much of what you consider is about the emotion that these colors evoke? Dark purple. Mm-hmm. Would you have said, I don't know that that's really right, because purple evokes this emotion, and it's not really what you're looking for in the group. Do you consider that piece of it when you're laying down your color palettes? Yeah,
yes and no. I mean, blues can evoke trust, stability. That's why we often see banks, banking systems or healthcare kind of floating towards blue. And they do. I mean, you can Google color theory. There's also a ton of information on Pinterest, and kind of see if you're in the realm of those adjectives that you want to emit. But I will say this, it also depends on your story. I mean, sometimes, like Caramore, for example, orange is very high energy, which is another brand that we'll show soon here, but orange is very high energy, but they're compassionate, so sometimes switching the tone and playing with the saturation can also help you reach your demographic and not necessarily, still have the same.
So short answer, if you came to us and said,
sum it up.
Came to us and said, I love dark purple, I have to have this, we would do our best. We'd take a look and say, we don't think that using dark purple as the main, if your brand goal is to be really exuberant and in your face, we'd say, hey, this is maybe not the best way to get this message across, but let's use dark purple for, your dark tone.
Or
try to
adversely, purple is very luxury. I mean, it's very premium. So, maybe we would say, hey, well, let's do it in a soft touch or something a little more premium. I mean, with process and, and
color can be intimidating. So I guess at the end of the day, we really try to incorporate your wants and needs with color. And we do our best to say, hey, this is going to be a little bit off brand from where you're trying to go, but we can still use the color. Maybe we're just adjusting the saturation or the darkness or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Color is everything, because color is, I would say, even more than the shape of your logo, your color palette is such a strong call to recognition of your brand.
Yeah. What's the stat? It's 60%.
It's something like 60% of your opinion of a product, if you walk up and pick it up, is just based on the color of the packaging.
Color alone.
So,
and within, I think, the first 30 seconds of looking at it, you already decide. Just on color. So it's a big part of a point of purchase, point of sale. I mean, it's a big part of that decision.
That is a really interesting statistic, ladies. I didn't know that. I knew that color was very powerful.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that it was that powerful. It was 60%. So ladies, if you're watching this and you're considering putting your brand together, you really need to make sure that your colors are revealing things about your brand that you want people to feel, to know, to think that those colors really are very strong and consistent in your packaging and your branding. That they, and one thing I've noticed in dealing with color palettes is that you can have a pink and a red and a green, but if the tone of them is not aligned, they'll look awful together. And that's one of the things that it really takes a designer's eye to understand the subtleties of how colors work together and tones work together in color, and why you should definitely consider working with a designer when it comes to determining those colors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good. That's
so, okay. So we've got logo, we've got color, and now let's talk about font.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Fonts are so when we go, we both kind of have our own unique process, but I will say like my process when I start on a brand often will start with the typeface. So I like to pull a font out and see how it looks with the name. One thing we went through back and forth with Kate and Academy specifically was finding that perfect K. So that's something I would suggest, like as you go to look for fonts, when you're looking for them, make sure you're actually typing out your name in there, because you might find, oh, this font looks great in the test word, but I really hate the way that W is shaped or something like that. As someone whose name starts with a B, I hate when the bottom bubble of the B is smaller than the top, little things like that. But for this, we really wanted to do the inspiration. Again, we had talked with Kira about some kind of overall direction for fonts. So we knew we wanted something that was a little bit thin, a little feminine, but still professional, not too scripty and flourishy.
Legible. We knew that, you were going to be using a lot of copy because you are an educational platform.
Strong title font.
Yeah, strong title font. Yep.
So something I should know about both of these fonts, these are Google fonts. Google has created this whole library. I think it's over 800 fonts now.
Thank you, Google.
You can download them. Yeah, they're available for free and they are excellent.
And you can access them anywhere, which is pretty incredible.
You can, use them on the web, and that's really important too, is just having a plan. So in this case, we've got our title font, which is Poirier 1. And we're using that for main logos, kind of main headers and things like that. And then kind of our workhorse font is this Lato regular, and then we will also use different variations of the Lato font depending on the use. So really when it comes to fonts, yes, pick something super cool for your name. Absolutely. But you're going to want also to pick out a secondary font, because you don't want to have to put out a whole brochure in this, crazy title font. And you also don't want to have to think about it after the fact. So picking two fonts, one kind of for your titles and your main things, and then a secondary one that you can use for body, something that works really well at a really small size. That's kind of the rule of thumb. And I really love Lato. We have used that a couple times so far.
Yeah, I think Lato,
Roboto is really
Roboto
nice.
is another good Google free font.
Montserrat is one we're going to look at next with Caden, so we can take a look at that. With Caramel. So picking a font that's got a couple different weights, making sure that it's got numbers and punctuation. A lot of free fonts out there don't have the full.
Interesting.
Yeah, and make sure you're always double checking on usage. Make sure it's free for commercial use. You don't want to pick a font and then later on realize that it's
sure you have the license.
Yeah, the license, or that you've at least donated to whoever has put it together. But contrast is key with font as well. So you'll see if you can do different weights or a script with, a very like a Lato or something simple.
And another thing to Google is just if you Google font pairings, there's a ton of people have already done a lot of the hard work for you. So they'll have a header font and then a few fonts that pair nicely with it. So that's a really good place to start.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I will say that using fonts that Google has laid out makes it easier when you're using other programs like Canva, MailChimp. So MailChimp, for instance, is very, very limited. You cannot add fonts to their selection, but you want to have brand consistency. And I think one thing that gets overlooked is people don't realize in all of your materials, whether it's a newsletter or a flyer, you have those fonts for a reason. Only use fonts. So in order to keep yourself from running into a situation where you're in MailChimp and now you're having to choose a completely other brand font because they don't have the one that you have, choosing a really common font like the Lato will make your job much easier. And so if you are going to be producing a lot of media, make sure that all of the programs that you're using, they may not have your header font, but at least if they have your secondary font, you know you'll be able to maintain that brand consistency, because this is the difference between a real brand that is a recognized brand that feels like something you would buy on a store shelf, like a Coca-Cola, like a brand that is just very, very well established, and a brand that really doesn't know what they're doing. If they're putting fonts in a newsletter that are different from their website, that are different from their flyers, that are different from their packaging, it loses the viewer on a very subtle level, and the viewer can't tell you exactly what it is, but in their brain, there's just something it's not closing the loop. It's not feeling complete. So making sure you choose a font that is readily available as a secondary font is so critical to maintaining your brand consistency. And things like that, they don't require a major investment. Those are those little subtle things that just can keep continuity.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. Let's see the rest of what you've done for us. Thank you for that information on fonts, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we,
here.
Oh, well, yeah, let's go through the rest of, take a look at the rest of our logo and just see if I've got any other questions for you about it.
Okay,
yeah,
let's see.
Just jump back in there. All right, are we up now?
View full screen mode.
Yes, you're still sharing.
Okay,
cool.
Great.
So yeah, I guess main seal was this one, which kind of brings it all together. In practical use, Kira's probably not going to use this a whole ton, but it's really cool to have one thing that brings it all together. And we really viewed this as something that could be really fun for merch and just to kind of like bring it all together. So that's kind of the first one. And then
I also do want to hint really quickly, when you are developing, make sure you remember what platforms. We have included a circle social mark because we knew that, Kira, you rely heavily on social for your obviously for your company. So we wanted to make sure that we were implementing social right off the bat. So just be aware of how you're implementing this when you are building those main assets.
So
yeah, then again, Caden's list.
So Caden's list was our triangle.
And so here you've done the same thing. What can you tell me? I see the single color in the reverse. Where would we use something like that?
So these are going to be really nice for situations where you can't use your full color logo for whatever reason. So things that are common situations, if you're sponsoring an event with someone and they have a poster layout they're doing, and everyone's logo has to be
one single color. Yeah.
If you're doing these are nice variations for merch and things like that. So if you wanted to do an embroidery of something, embroidery can get super expensive the more colors you add. So you might want to do just the reverse in that.
We also wanted to give you a version with the line work that wasn't just the triangle. So you could also show the reverse of the single color with the reverse and single color of the other brands. So that they're consistent, and then they're not competing with each other. There's only 3 colors that you're viewing rather than 8. So again, it's kind of just giving you a second or tertiary option in this case, for to not have the eye necessarily competing with other colors.
Mm-hmm.
And this is again one of those subtle pieces that creates a real sense of a brand.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to use your logo in so many different ways. You're going to have so many different needs for them, different sizes, different colors. And so working with designers who are already thinking ahead, they can help you anticipate, as you've seen, right? Maybe we'll end up having to put our logo on a banner that's got to be a single color. So experienced designers have been through a lot of the different situations with clients. And when they set up your brand book, which is, we're looking at Cadence brand book right now, which is basically a collection of all of your colors, your styles, your logos, and how you use them to create consistency for yourself as a guide. All of these little elements are really important to get done up front. And, you know, it's a bit of a labor intensive experience for the designers as well as for you, really getting clear on what it is that you want, because you don't necessarily know until it comes back. But having them be able to think ahead of what you're doing. You're going to need it for social. You're going to need it in various sizes. You're going to need something that shows up as a favicon. So it's a real benefit of working with a talented design team. So I so much appreciate the fact that you are out there thinking ahead of my needs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, really, this is a guide. It is a tool for you to really, and you don't just build all these assets, it's then implementing them, which is generally the trickiest part. So building this guide to help you, you know, stay consistent. And when you do get stuck, you know, because obviously not everyone's fortunate enough to have a team of designers on staff all the time, but that's what really this guide is for. And, no, I mean, it's a fun, it is a labor intensive process, but it is fun.
Something else you should mention too, I'll flip down to Cadence Academy just so we can compare, is you should also, no matter what your logo is, you should have a version of your company name that exists as text. And so you can see with lists, we've actually done a couple different layouts, but you're also probably going to find that sometimes you can't use your logo or it just doesn't make sense. So we call this a word mark. So it's good to have your logo and a word mark as well. And then you really have between your primary logo, like we see here, your single colors and your word mark, that forms this whole system where if anyone throws any type of layout at you, you can handle it.
Yep.
And like if we were talking about a package or a company that would use packaging, you know, maybe you're only using the word mark on a package because that's the demographic you're going for. Maybe it's supposed to be more sleek. But yeah, it just gives you some more flexibility. That's something always to look for when you're working with a designer, or even if you have someone just doing the logo part, is trying to figure out a way to lay out that text where it makes sense and looks good.
On this one, I also want to bring some attention to the color red. So the color red is an extremely powerful color in the mind. And most fine art has a dot of red somewhere in it that you cannot even detect, because it will determine where your eye goes in the painting. Red is extremely powerful and can be overused very easily. You've done a great job here because you've toned it down. I can see there's a good amount of black in it to kind of calm it, but I was trying to make a flyer the other day and I put background as red and I immediately felt trapped within the 4 squares. And I put the pink behind it and suddenly the red made me feel, you know, following the red pieces of the flower into the rest of the frame made me feel more open. So red is a color to use very sparingly and very delicately, and one you have to offset with other colors that are not as hot, not as bright.
Right, for sure. And this one too, you'll notice this is the only logo where we're using the darkest red, and we are not using any green with it. And that's definitely exactly what you said, because as soon as you put a complementary tone next to that red, it's going to amp it up even more. So so that's something we knew we were going to have to avoid when we were using the bold red. And yeah, you nailed it exactly. We've just taken it and made it a little bit darker, a little bit more subdued, but it still feels really rich and warm and powerful, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, ladies, if you can add a spot of red, an accent of red,
yep,
I recommend it. It's a very powerful color, but don't overdo it, and make sure that the tone that you choose for that is really, really works well with the rest of your color palette. And it doesn't always have to have a green as a complementary color. You can see here our dark charcoal of our font color for our black and our pale pink look beautiful. And the white in the center of it, it's gorgeous. Well done, ladies.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, and that's
and
that high contrast area.
Yep.
And yeah, I think red for sure is a power color.
It is.
And especially in cannabis. We see so much green, but no, I think color is so fun. And yeah, I guess along with the process, like it is a process. So don't be afraid to, if you're working with a designer, don't be afraid to come back and say, hey, I like these two, but this one's just not jiving with me, or, something just doesn't sit right when I pull it up on my screen. Like that's all great for us to know. And
color takes a while. So again, don't be afraid to give your designer feedback that you might just hate it. And it could just be tone, it's really just pushing it, and small details make all the difference. So
awesome. I just want to let you know that our dear Jamie Cooper said she loves the Awaekn ladies.
Yay, thank you, Jamie. We love Jamie.
All right, so this one you just knocked it out of the park. And we launched this week on that pale pink background, and the ladies loved it. So what about this do you think resonates with the women in our group? Why do you think they love this so much?
I think WEiC culturally is just so, close knit. And I think that we really wanted to really establish it with those green tones. Again, blue tones can establish trust, community. So we knew that we wanted to take this in the more green blue hue.
Well, and it goes dark to light from outside to center, which kind of pulls you in. And I just love seeing that pale pink with the green. I think we talked about, when we were talking about color with Kira, we talked a lot about doing something that felt very, very women oriented, but still was business. And I think that dark green feels very serious, and we're here to do serious business. We're some powerful women, but we're also women, and we can be soft and open with each other and share. And I think for me, that's what that pale pink gives us, is it's just such a warm, beautiful color on that, kind of grounding, serious business green. So that's what I love about this one.
Without being an obvious pink.
Yeah. It's not too sweet. It's feminine, but it's not Barbie. It doesn't look like it belongs in a toy aisle. And that's another kind of color subtlety note, is if you look at this pink by itself, it's actually pretty desaturated. It doesn't have a whole ton of red in it. But when you pair it against that green, it kind of pops out a little bit. But we love that pale pink. I think that we can use that all over the place.
Again, establishing those light and dark tones first, so that when you do go into, building those sub brands, where to start from. So yeah.
I love it.
How bold this one looks.
Yeah.
In particular. Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
All right.
And yeah, I think so. This is our last page, which is the Empowerment Summit, and this is another one. So this is kind of our first blush at it, but as we get closer to this event, we'll kind of build this out and add in the supporting graphics it needs.
Yeah, and this really, it's funny how logo assets and additional logos or additional events can really take on their own visuals. Don't be afraid to tack on another sub brand. As long as that you have the elements organized, it can really add a lot to your brand. And we also Summit, we wanted to add another geometric shape. Just in the wording alone, we found a lot of inspiration.
Yeah. So sometimes that, heading up shape as well is part of this.
Yeah. So sometimes just jotting down adjectives or coming up with verbiage first can really stimulate a lot of visuals for your designer, which obviously, Kira, you had the name kind of already picked out, and that really helped us finalize that geometry.
Well, and another thing we should mention is this page we are also kind of using this hashtag better together in conjunction with the shapes as its own little graphic mark. So that's something that Kira can use across all of her brands and the event, that brings them all together. So you can see it's using their font, it's using the colors, and it's just like an extra piece you can use to remind people the hashtag.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I'm so thrilled with what you ladies have done. Thank you so much for putting your time and energy into helping us really bring all of these ideas together under an umbrella that feels like a real brand now, and not my $35 Caden Academy logo I've been working under for 2 years.
I mean, you got to start somewhere, you know. That was able to really get Brandy and I to here. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, ladies, we've got 15 minutes left. Let's take a look at some other brands you've worked on. And so we can kind of see in contrast what you've been talking about as you've been going through our brand. We can see how that looks in some other brands.
Yeah. So I think the one we're going to show today is Caramore. So this is a brand that is located in Puerto Rico. This particular location you're seeing in this rendering is in San Juan. So when the interesting part about this is when we came into this project, we were originally just going to design the interior. And that's kind of what Hillary and my background is in. We met designing branded environments. So we kind of started with the environment and some of the existing branding. And through the course of working together with this client, we actually kind of went backwards and developed a little bit of their brand after the fact. But I think what we've ended up with is something that feels really full and consistent. And just like Kira's been saying, like an entire brand and not just these disparate pieces.
Yeah. So I want to just interject on this. When we started, because this is a project that I've been working on, and I brought Brandy and Hillary in. When we started developing this brand, we had to look at, okay, there are a lot of dispensaries in Puerto Rico. What is there so far? Because it's about making yourself stand out through your color palette, through your font, and through your design. And what we saw was there were your typical stoner shops, or they went the other direction, being heavily pharmaceutical. Puerto Rico is an island where pharmaceuticals had great tax benefits. So the industry was really built up there for a long time. So there's still, I think, that sense of white jackets, very clinical, that resonates with Puerto Rico. But there was nothing that felt like for the people, by the people. This is truly a celebration of the island. So that's what we started with, right? We need to make this feel to the locals like this is their place. It feeds back to them the colors that they see and the vibe that they see throughout the island. And then I also want to point out the way that you have, again, taken the leaf, the cannabis leaf, and integrated it into this brand in a totally unique way. Back, you can see the Caramore. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So this was another challenge that I laid down for you to say, how do we now also create in this brand where the heart is our main logo, something that doesn't look like anything else that's on the market and can start to feel like the Caramore mark. So well done on this as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this was another one where building this out, we didn't put together all the different versions, but we went through a lot of different ways to do this. So this is
we did.
Yeah. Definitely just took that and broke it down, 50 different ways, but really it was about working with the proportions of that 7-point shape and the shape of the heart. And something I want to mention about this is that heart shape is actually built off of the letter A in this font. Yeah. So that's just a subtle way that we brought in the shapes. So all the shapes feel really consistent.
You're getting the same curvature throughout the word mark and the logo. So again, those tiny details.
So this is, I guess should we go back to font?
Yeah. So again, here's another example of, some contrasting fonts. The Montserrat is actually used as a title in this case, but it's also good as a secondary font if you do have more of a scripty or, ornate title font. And then Avenir, we wanted something light, especially because in the logo, you can see subheader or the, you know, again, that tagline, compassionate cannabis care, which is sometimes often, you know, an asset to your logo or your word mark. So we really wanted to make sure that a secondary font, something lighter, incorporating that tagline was available.
And then, yeah, I guess I think color is the big story here.
Yeah.
So we did a lot with the color for this as we worked through, and the inspiration was actually just the city of San Juan
Just
itself.
the region.
It's got a lot of incredible, gorgeous pastel colors all the way up to like these deep blues and really vibrant. So we wanted to pick enough colors, and this is another case where like you look at this color palette and it's like, wow, that's a lot of colors.
Very juicy.
But we wanted to pick enough colors that we recognized that San Juan vibe. But the big thing here was adding that that kind of peach tone. We're calling it stucco.
Yep.
That kind of grounds them all and gives us a base to work off of. And you can see that.
That is so beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah,
we're really excited.
We're very excited. So. We also truly sometimes we're so lucky to be able to have built a brand with you guys that also we were able to have the environment attached to, because really that's Brandy and I always talk to our clients about branded environments. We often see in this industry just interior designers or you know, sometimes contractors doing the dispensary build out. But truly, a branded environment is an extension of your brand voice. And it comes down to retail strategy. So oftentimes, you know, those same assets that are produced from your graphic designer, use those. I mean, there's no reason why you can't take that same voice and emulate it into a space.
Gorgeous. Okay, so by that, can you go back to the one in the waiting area? Because there's a lot there, yes. So if you look at the lighting fixtures, if you look at the next one with the chairs, I think that's a really good example of the layer. Okay, so here you've got a rug. You have the chairs and the colors of the chair and the colors of the cushions, the coffee table, the plants, I can see up front here, there's a couch with a pillow on it. The lighting fixtures over the table, what the reception desk is made out of. All of these are design choices. And you, as a dispensary owner, have to choose a desk for your reception. You have to choose chairs. You have to choose it. You have to do these things anyway. So why not choose them in a deliberate, unified theme that all works together so that when your customers walk in, they feel like they're in a space that has been thoughtful, been intentional to create an experience for you when you walk through the door. And I think that oftentimes when it comes to things like design, it feels so out of reach and hard to, how do you pick which thing? I don't know. Well, you start by, what is your color palette? Going back to that color palette and choosing those textures and those materials, right? Is it going to be glossy? Is it going to be, you know, rough and textury? Is it going to be bumpy? Is it going to look like stucco? And those are the places that you can start. And you know, if you can't afford to hire a designer, you may not get it all right, but at least try.
Yeah,
try to bring these elements in.
Well, and if you're not a designer, just allocate enough time for you to play and do research, because truly, I mean, that it really comes down to how much time you allow yourself and to really play and, you know, figure out those textures and those elements. Because sometimes it just comes down to sourcing and playing. Yeah.
What we landed on for this one, so this we kind of started with this breeze block. So this is something you see all over this neighborhood where this dispensary is located. It's kind of a very 1950s Caribbean. It's used in a lot of the architecture. So for this design, we kind of knew we wanted to build these counters out of breeze block and started with that. And then after that, we knew we wanted to incorporate tile, but do it in kind of a more exciting way. And then really the showpiece here is just this one feature wall that runs along the back that brings in all those beautiful San Juan colors. And we wanted to make sure it still felt mid-century. So that's why you kind of, you know, those slats and the straight lines feel, you know, very 50s. But this is something just I want to mention as an example. we're going to build this out, and this is going to be made out of wood where you see it here. They're actually going to be 2x2 sections of wood, and everything painted and mounted to the wall. But when we use it back here by the flower bar, this is going to be a wallpaper. So this is we're able to incorporate it multiple places, but for our customer, it's a lot less cost. It's a lot less fuss to install, but we're still able to take that branded element and carry it through multiple places. So that's another thing to think about too, is maybe you do want to drop a lot of your budget on a big, beautiful sign. You spend all this time developing your brand and your logo. So develop that sign, but then maybe pick some elements that
you can do in a wall covering.
Yeah, don't have to be so fancy.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this location is actually in a basement. And that was a big challenge for us. We really had to play with lighting and color, but not too overwhelming of color, make sure we're utilizing a lot of soft elements. And I think we've got video, a couple weeks ago, maybe, of the counters going in, and you can't even notice that you're in a basement. So I think lighting is always, make sure that you're really, that your products can be seen, that you have, clear visuals from reception to waiting room, opening up a space, because oftentimes in the cannabis industry, because of zoning, because of regs, your location sometimes isn't ideal. But sometimes hiring a designer, you can really play up that space to make it feel, intentional and on brand, and not necessarily the way it sometimes unfortunately happens.
Something else we should mention is, so this is how we start doing pretty much every project we work on, which is with a mood board. So like this is a mood board for this location that just has a few of the elements we were going to use, kind of our overall direction. So if you're doing this on your own, this is absolutely a great place to start. It's just to jump on Pinterest or even just Google, start grabbing some images that feel good to you, that have some things you like, putting them together and kind of playing around with it there.
And if you're getting stuck, we always go back to your demographic. Who are you shopping to? Where do they shop? What kind of things do they have in their homes? And it's not necessarily residential, but maybe we knew that our demographic here was women ages, 35 to 50s, and she's interested, she's on vacation, and she
wants to browse and shop. That was a big thing for this location, was that it felt like a shopping experience, not like a pharmaceutical experience. So we've got some carts in the middle that you can kind of circle around and browse. We'll have product going up on the shelves. And then this is where you have your one-on-one interactions with your bud tenders. Yeah.
So this was kind of a flower bar, and really an educational moment. And I also want to point out, and even just really quickly going back to waiting room, we see a lot of times in waiting rooms and dispensaries, just kind of only social points of where you're waiting, and it's oftentimes, we're building in consultation rooms, but they're often not needed. So make sure that you're creating different experiences for your waiting environments too, antisocial and social. If you have somebody coming alone, or if they're often in groups, really, really dialing in on that customer experience can help you organize what you need to buy, what you need to purchase, and what kind of zones you need in your waiting area.
So in one, it doesn't show it in this one, but we actually we're doing this in two different waiting rooms we're working on right now, but there's not necessarily a set consultation area, but there is a separate, set of chairs where you could go sit one-on-one with a patient and it feels private. So you don't necessarily have to do a whole room and space, but just think about it and have, maybe a little corner, and that will work great.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I just want to point out that when you walk into a dispensary, if you enjoy the environment, you're going to go back, you're going to stay longer, and you're going to purchase more. So it is an investment that I absolutely encourage every dispensary owner. Retail is so important. And even though we're in cannabis, and to some degree you have some guaranteed sales, you're still having to separate yourself. You've got to have a competitive advantage. And right now, the best competitive advantage to take in a retail environment is making a thoughtful space, because so few exist. And the little details make you sell more money. They encourage, let me rephrase that, they encourage more buying.
And customer loyalty, like you said, you're gonna get a return customer if they have a good experience. And yeah, it has so much to do with the walkthrough and the waiting experience they have, and if how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
The lighting.
The lighting.
So music.
Yep. Exactly.
The colors on the walls. And, we started this conversation talking about the emotional response that we have to color. And if your environment is black and green, people feel locked in and aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, those color combinations do. So you want to make sure that, and also not just pure white, because those walls get dirty. Yep. And then all you see are the dirt on the walls. So adding color, adding texture, it can just create an emotional experience that people have where they're going to go back. They're going to linger. Think about sitting at that flower bar. I would sit there with a cup of coffee and talk to the bud say.
Exactly. It's creating the opportunity for them to want to ask questions, right? Like, all of us have so many dire questions, but sometimes in a dispensary, we almost feel intimidated, or, we don't necessarily. Brandy and I always say we want to create spaces that our moms can walk into, or our grandmothers can walk into and feel comfortable. And, luckily the demographic was female here, so we were able to really do that. But it doesn't matter who your demographic is, creating that comfortable opportunity where the customer feels like they can ask questions and they can educate themselves. Those are the customers that return. So
that's a really good point. Building into your environment places where people will be encouraged to ask questions.
Yes.
Will be encouraged to really look through the product. And that's one thing that I think MedMen has done right in their dispensaries, is they have placed everything in the middle so that you can walk around and really take your time to look at the product before you make a decision. And most dispensaries don't go that extra mile. So everything's behind the counter. And if you're looking at 3 or 4 feet away and you're like me and I've got to have my glasses on to see stuff, I'm not going to even notice half the product that you have. So we have to start bringing some traditional retail expertise into the cannabis dispensary environment if we're really going to make these dispensaries successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, ladies. Well, I can't believe we've been talking for an hour already and we haven't even gotten through everything. So we're going to have you back in a couple of months.
Yeah,
and
we would love to.
Projects. This has been, I've been working with you on both of these projects and I learned a lot today. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and your talent with us. This has been a really informative episode. So thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Oh, hey, anytime. And I appreciate all the love you put into our logos. And I think it's going to be very meaningful for the women to be able to represent their group with your gorgeous logo.
Yeah, we're excited for the whole launch and
much appreciated.
Great.
All right, ladies, thank you at home for tuning in. As you know, this week has been full of news in WEiC. And in about an hour, we are going to be back and we're going to be broadcasting some very exciting news that you do not want to miss. This is going to be a very big announcement we have coming up in about an hour. So look out for us at 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern. You do not want to miss this. So until then, thank you, Brandy.
Thanks, Kira.
Awaekn Creative for all of the work and love. You look beautiful and well branded and being an example for other brands in this space. We will talk with you ladies soon. Have a great day.
Bye.